Good morning and welcome to the Rattle and Hum Sports Live Spreecast, the SEC Week number 10. I'm Bryan Houston, and boy, we have got this is it. This is the week. First of all, the College Football Playoff Committee announced its first top four. That's going to create quite a bit of controversy. And then, of course, we've got the big ball game, number 2 LSU against number 4 Alabama in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night on CBS, and bringing in Guerra now, the author of Gumbo for the Tiger's Soul, to talk about this and all things SEC this week. Cess, as far as I'm concerned, there is no other ball game this weekend, so all you A&M and Ole Miss fans, you might as well just go someplace else now because we're not getting you.
Yeah, it's a Super Bowl like environment, and all the national media, whether it's ESPN or Sirius XM, everybody's talking about LSU, Alabama, and all the ramifications around that game, SEC West, SEC Championship, and the playoffs. So it's really the beginning of the playoffs, and here we go.
All right, I'm already going to have a little break up here, so just bear with me as our internet battles to get through this thing. As we pop up pictures on the screen and get you fired up for the ball game. Seth, the first thing about this game, number one, is that the college football poll came out. The selection committee announced their top four. Everybody expected LSU to be in that top four somewhere. The surprise was a one-loss Alabama team got in at number 4 over some undefeated teams, and of course that sent all the SEC haters into head explosion mode because there must be some kind of bias and conspiracy to favor the SEC over everybody else in the country. Were you surprised that Alabama made it into the top 4?
No, not really. Alabama, year in, year out, has the best players, and that's what a lot of these people are looking at. The best players making awesome plays. If it weren't for Leonard Fournette, it'd be a lot of Derrick Henry conversation for the Heisman. They've got all the flash. They've got history, tradition, and their one loss, and there's other teams that have had one loss, but their one loss was to Ole Miss with a lot of turnovers involved. So and they had a chance to win it at the end.
And my thing is eyeball test. If you're going to have a committee, one of the reasons they took the computers out and replaced the BCS system is because they wanted the human factor. They wanted people who were football people to sit in a room and discuss, argue who were the best teams. And the eyeball test right now, I got to tell you, I don't like saying this, but the eyeball test for me is Alabama's the best football team in the country right now. And that includes saying that with being an LSU fan. The eyeball test has just been off the charts over the last month.
Right. I mean, they've dismantled a couple of teams that needed to be dismantled or should have been dismantled. They took on a very improved Tennessee team at home after a very difficult game at Georgia. And that Georgia game was the 2:30 game of the week that week, and they really looked like a team on a mission at that point in time. So I think that game there really resonated with a lot of the committee members, and if people really think about it, although Georgia has come down to earth and doesn't look like the team that we all thought they were going to be, but they've sustained some significant injuries, and that's part of it. So Alabama's pretty darn good. So yeah.
And I will tell you, I take a lot of stock in what a team is when you play them. I'm a little bit leery to rate a team based on where they are now as to opposed to where they were when they played. And when Alabama played Georgia, Georgia was one of the top 5 teams in the country at the time, if I recall correctly. They were definitely in the top 10. They were on a roll. They were playing good football, and Alabama went in there and just slapped them around like they were a Division II school. And yes, since then they've been derailed, but I've watched enough football to see games like that completely collapse a team's season. And I think that's what
Right.
happened to Georgia. They got bitch slapped by Alabama, and it ruined the rest of their year. I really believe that.
Yeah, that happens. That's one of the ongoing things that I've noticed over the years as well, and it's happened to LSU a couple of times, losing to Alabama late in the season, and then you're in a funk. And I've noticed it again. I go back to the emotion of the game, and young players, you take the steam out of them, and that happens. So I would say the team, or the game that parallels what you just said about Georgia to Alabama is Auburn to LSU. Auburn was highly rated when we played them, and we just beat them like a rented goat.
Well, and at the same time, I think that sometimes you can judge the measure of a football team by how they come back after a loss. And Alabama, I think, got kind of shocked when they went into, they played Ole Miss. It was a revenge game, and Ole Miss comes to Tuscaloosa and beats them for a second time in a row, something that doesn't happen to a Nick Saban team very often. And what you automatically look for is, okay, is Alabama for real? How are they going to respond to a ball game like that? And how Alabama responded to a ball game like that was to get pissed off and play the best football they've played for about the last month and a half now.
Right, and just like LSU, they've had 2 weeks to kind of get their legs back under them, get healthy, and really focus on the Tiger team that they're about to face on Saturday night. And so it's going to be very, very interesting. As I said before, all the national pundits are focused in on that game. All the eyes of the college football universe are going to be focused on Tuscaloosa on Saturday night, in which looks like it's going to be a weather affected game. So it's going to be very interesting how that impacts all the plays in that game.
All right. The other thing I want to ask you about concerning this ball game, LSU's ranked second in the nation. There are a lot of people that believe LSU might be the best team in the country right now, and that's among the experts. I'm not talking from a fan standpoint. The experts who have no dog in the hunt think that they may be a genuine, legitimate contender to be in the championship game when it's all said and done. Yet they go into Tuscaloosa as a 6.5-point underdog in this ball game. Were you surprised by that? That's a big spread.
That is this game always comes down to the fourth quarter. That is a big spread. The national pundits are saying that LSU is the best team in the land, and I'm sure there's other teams that'll argue that. But they really do look solid. Brandon Harris is really beginning to mature and grow as a quarterback and as a leader of the offense, and it's going to keep the opposing defenses off balance on Saturday night and on the rest of the season. So I think Las Vegas usually gets a lot of these things right, but if they don't, it'll be no surprise as well.
All right, and then of course there are a number of matchups that we're really excited about seeing. One is going to be the matchup between the favorite for the Heisman Trophy. That's Leonard Fournette right now. A lot of people think that he's already got his ticket punched to New York, and rightfully so. Derrick Henry has had probably almost as good a season. He's looked just as impressive in most of the ball games. Number one, who do you think has the bigger night in this ball game if you're having to be a betting man?
Whew. Brian, that's just such a difficult question to answer. you've got two great running backs, and I've been eyeballing Derrick Henry for a while now, and he's just been impressive throughout his career. Just big, fast, hard to bring down, and it's just amazing to me that Alabama went away from Derrick Henry in last year's playoff game against Ohio State, in a game that I think if they would have stuck with him, they could have pulled that one out. But Derrick Henry versus Leonard Fournette, I think that comes down to what's going to happen in the trenches. And you've got an offensive line with Alabama that's shown some cracks. And if Ed Orgeron and his defensive line can take advantage of that, I think we can slow Derrick Henry down. So who knows? Just flip a coin on that one.
The other thing that you have to take into account is that that Alabama, as most teams have done this year, will probably load the box against LSU. They don't want Fournette to beat them. They want to see if Brandon Harris can beat them. My question to you is, based on what you've seen of Brandon Harris this year, is Harris up to the task of going into Tuscaloosa? And if the ball game comes down to the fourth quarter and the running game is struggling, is Brandon Harris going to be able to lead the Tigers to a touchdown to win a ball game?
Based upon everything that I've seen this season, I believe that Brandon Harris can do it. I think that the offensive line and the threat of Leonard Fournette will keep that defensive line, the front seven for Bama, just a little bit on their heels. That's not to say that they're not going to get their share of sacks or hurries or whatever, but Brandon Harris can beat you on the ground with his legs, but he's shown now that he's got a very strong arm. His accuracy has improved, and with the receivers hanging on to the ball, anything's possible. And I think this team has all the confidence in the world that can take them to victory on Saturday night.
I have to ask you, based on what we've seen of Brandon Harris this year, are you surprised at how effective he's been?
No, I haven't. I think one of the things that I mentioned to you early on in our conversation about quarterbacks and quarterback development was the fact that in prior years, the quarterbacks that have been under the tutelage of Cam Cameron for a couple of years have shown vast improvement in their second year. And I'll take you back to Zach Mettenberger. His second year under Cam Cameron was 2013, and that was just an amazing season with all kinds of statistics and numbers put up by Met. So it didn't surprise me. I was really pleased to see it because all the people that are in the know really believed all along that Brandon Harris was a better quarterback than Anthony Jennings. Of course, I'm just a fan. I don't see the practices, but the performance on the field was such that Anthony Jennings was not the answer, and then Brandon Harris has taken the bull by the horns and earned every bit of his continued playing time.
The thing I have to say about Brandon Harris, and this is, for all that he's done as far as being able to throw the ball downfield and give the LSU Tigers a passing attack to be afraid of, is the fact that the guy has not thrown an interception yet.
Amazing. It really is amazing. I think there's a couple of balls that were close to being picked off, but he has shown such maturity in throwing the ball away. I remember one ball early in the second game / first game versus Mississippi State where it was like a little inside. It was supposed to be like a little inside pass, and he threw the ball to the ground. And I saw the play a little earlier this week, and it really was a good read on his part and a good decision to just throw it into the ground. And he's been making those decisions all year long, either throwing it out of the end zone or throwing it out of bounds, rolling out, and just and getting rid of the ball. So, but again, that's a great sign for the Tigers and the future.
All right, then we flip the screen just a bit, and let's talk about the other quarterback, Jay Coker. Jacob Coker transferred in from Florida State, could not win the job last year, didn't seem to have a real firm grasp on it at the beginning of the season, but he has come on and started playing like a quarterback that looks like an Alabama quarterback. He's a game manager that doesn't make a ton of mistakes and makes the throws when he has to make them. What's your impression of Coker and his potential in a ball game like this?
Well, I think the Tide are starting to really become believers of Jacob Coker. I think he proved himself in that Tennessee game where Alabama found themselves down late in the game with under 5 minutes left in the game, and Coker took them down the field just with all the confidence and poise, and just managed the game, kept the chains moving, managed the clock, and took the Crimson Tide in for a winning score. So yeah, he's had some interception problems, and the offensive line, as I said before, has shown some signs of cracks, and he's been susceptible to pressure. So that's what I'm hoping to see is our defensive line taking advantage of. And I'll put up the air quotes, the weaknesses of Alabama's offensive line.
Yeah, and you better put up air quotes for that because there are not many weaknesses on either one of these teams. The one thing that has really, really impressed me about Coker, and again, it's kind of a characteristic of Alabama quarterbacks over the years. You've seen him this year several times pull the ball down and run, and when he's had a chance to slide or run out of bounds, instead what he's done is put a shoulder into somebody and run over him like a fullback. He's shown a toughness that is very much, I guess, a characteristic of the Alabama team from top to bottom, and one that has to inspire your teammates when you see a guy out there willing to just lower his head and go for the extra yard at the risk of injury to do it.
Right. I've noticed that on a couple of plays. It's not the wisest thing to do. I think there are certain circumstances where it's late in the game and you've got to make the first down. You got to do it, but it's not the wisest thing to do when this is such a quarterback's game. And you're right. I remember seeing plays in the Super Bowl where a quarterback like either a Brett Favre or a John Elway just stuck his head in the middle of some linebackers and defensive backs and just really pumped the team up. And that can be very inspiring when it happens. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. And then on the defensive side, I can't think of a better defensive front seven than what Alabama throws on the field. They're huge, they're fast, and I do wonder. And obviously, as an LSU fan, I'm very interested to see if LSU can line up and run the football like they have against everybody else when they line up against this Alabama team that again is going to be focused on trying to shut Fournette down.
Tennessee had some success on the edges. That Alabama middle is just going to be very, very difficult to get through it. I'm sure we have a game plan in place that we're going to test it and keep them honest. But Tennessee did show some success on the edges, so I'm sure we'll take advantage of that with some of the jet sweeps and some of the option moves and zone read type of plays. So that's going to be a major challenge. And from what I'm hearing is not only is the front seven all going to be playing on Sunday at some point in time, but there's many of the guys that are on the second string of those positions going to be playing on Sunday as well. So there's not only great players on the field, but great players coming in for reserve duty and spot duty.
In other words, it's just another Alabama team.
Exactly. You know, there's no secret to it. There's really no surprise there. I mean, Alabama, Nick Saban, they're at the top of the recruiting charts every year. They don't recruit, they reload. So and a lot of people will say that about LSU too. So after losing so many players over the last 3 years to the NFL, it seems as though we finally got back to our normal depth at all positions. So that's good to see, and hopefully, or I wouldn't mind seeing Alabama struggle with some of those issues and seeing some of those players leave in a mass exodus as well. So that would be good to see how that turns out for the Crimson Tide loyalists.
Yeah, and I've never quite understood why Alabama hasn't dealt with that like LSU's had to deal with it over the years. So, but whatever it is, hopefully the Tigers will be able to stem that tide and slow that run to the NFL a little bit as they did this past year. All right, so ultimately, who wins this football game?
LSU 27-24.
Woo! Very confident.
Yeah, I think we'll get an early lead and hang on to win at the end. We will not go third down and shave us.
Okay, all right, fair enough there. I do want to talk about.
What do you think?
What do you think? Man, I'm very nervous about this football game, mostly because it's in Tuscaloosa. The one thing that bugs me about LSU right now is that they are, regardless of the talent level, they are still a very young football team. And they're going into a place in the biggest game of the year. And I'm just very interested to see how they handle it from a youth standpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. I think one of the axioms that I will answer your comments with is the old axiom in college basketball where the coaches talked about the freshmen and how they talked about, well, the one good thing about his freshmen is that they become sophomores. Well, the good thing about LSU's youth is the fact that a lot of our young players got some great and valuable experience last year in a very tumultuous season. And this year has been a really a great exposure or great chance for them to really get into their own on the field. And I feel as though these guys now are almost juniors. A lot of these true sophomores, redshirt freshmen, I mean, they're all very well experienced, have a lot of game time experience at their hands. So, and they've been into some very, difficult playing conditions too. So, I think they're ready.
I hope they are. I'm a little reluctant to make a pick on this because I just think it's a toss-up. I do think it's a coin flip kind of a ball game, and the fact that they're playing in Tuscaloosa leads me to favor Alabama and hope I'm wrong. That's about the way I have to put it. I think Alabama's got to be favored in the game, but I hope I'm wrong. So I'm going to say Alabama. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm going to say Alabama. A very close ball game, and I don't like having to do that, but I just think that I'm afraid it's going to come down, as it has the past few years, to one of those final drives at the end of a ball game, as it's done, it seems like every year for about the past 5 years. And, is LSU going to be able to stop them from making a big play in the final minutes of a ball game? And I want to see that happen. And honestly, I think although the Florida game was a huge ball game and a big win for LSU, I think I've seen Alabama in more tested situations so far than LSU has been in, and so I'm still not quite sure. The LSU schedule is backloaded. They've got Ole Miss, they still got A&M coming up after Alabama. and I think that their toughest games are ahead of them. Alabama's played some tough games already, in addition to more than just one, and so that's where I'm kind of hesitant.
Yeah, I cannot dispute that as far as Alabama being in big games, but I think that partially it's because a lot of the spotlight is on Alabama so often. I mean, LSU proved themselves at Mississippi State. I mean, that we dominated the first part of that game in hostile conditions, and that was really our first game of the year. It was Mississippi State's second game of the year. We go right back on the road against Syracuse, and just a very difficult circumstances. Even we've had a road game at home, so that was kind of a topsy-turvy feeling. So, but I think we've got the perfect coach at the perfect time to lead us through these kinds of situations. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to read his latest quote that is just tickling me. You know what the one I'm talking about?
No, go ahead.
ESPN was interviewing Coach Miles about the upcoming game, and they asked him about whether or not he'd rather be an Alabama fan or LSU fan. And this was Coach Miles' response. Would I rather be a Bama fan? Of course not. LSU is just boatloads more fun. Alabama is respectable and dignified. They are college football royalty. We're completely unhinged psychopaths. In the SEC family, we're the crazy drunk uncle. Everybody loves that guy so long as he trashes somebody else's house. Well,
Right.
we're coming to trash Alabama's house this week. Hide the china.
I love it. I love it. Here's the thing that
That's
I'm looking
less.
at.
That's
That is
less.
that's what makes you love less. By the way,
Absolutely.
the thing that
Absolutely.
I'm
It's such a. Go ahead.
yeah. I'm just looking at schedules right now, and Alabama, with wins over Wisconsin, Georgia, Arkansas, A&M, Tennessee, and right now LSU's wins. Mississippi State was a good win, no question about it. They crushed Auburn. I don't know how good Auburn is. The South Carolina team was not in a good place when they played them, and that's why Steve Spurrier resigned. Florida has been their real test. I think Alabama's been tested by better football teams up to this point, which is why I'm looking at this saying, because their schedule has not been backloaded, they've had to take a lot of their tough games already. Um, they're used to this. I'm interested to see LSU's yet to have a road game like this. They've yet to have a game like this where they've got to go on the road. Mississippi State's a good football team, but they're not, they're not all that. And
Right.
that's
No,
that's
understand.
what's concerning. That's what I'm saying. And I'm not, listen, again, spoken from an LSU fan's perspective, okay? There's nothing that would make me happier than to see them respond this weekend, go in there and, just be the sledgehammer that I think they can be. I think it's going to be a tough ball game, and I'm just not sure if they've been tested enough up to this point to be ready for what they're going to face this weekend. I hope they are. And I
Right.
agree with you in one respect, no question about it. I definitely agree that Les is the guy. If anybody can bring a team into a situation like that and keep them loose and keep the game from getting too big for them, Les Miles can do that. And I also
Right.
think that I think their defensive strategy. I think Orgeron and Steele have brought something different to the defense, so it's not going to be it's not going to be John Chavis against Nick Saban again, as it's been for the last 10 years. It seems like it's going to be something different, and I do believe that that's going to be. I think that gives it another ingredient we haven't seen before. And I
Right.
personally, I don't see anybody being able to stop Leonard Fournette. Okay, now can Alabama hold him under 150 yards? That's the question. And
Right.
nobody's been able to do that up to now, unless it's just a matter of Les saying, okay, it's time to take him out and let him rest for a while. That's been the only thing that stopped him all year long, is just deciding that you want to put him on a pitch count.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I agree with all the things you said about Les Miles and his ability to not let the game get too big for the players, the young players that we have. I think we've seen the development of a lot of young players. As I think about it, the offensive line has a couple of freshmen that are contributing. Number three, Johnson, I can't think of his first name, Tavon Johnson, I believe. Number three has taken over the slot position over Trey Quinn. But Trey Quinn offers a very experienced a second option at that position. But it's going to be real interesting. I hope the Tigers can play without making the mistakes that we've seen in the past. I mean, I know a couple of years ago we took the first drive, just marched it down the field, and then fumbled going into the end zone. And
Right.
it was so demoralizing that we were marching at will, doing what we wanted, and then you fumble it in the end zone at the beginning of the game, and it just changed the complexion of that game. So hopefully we can put it all together, keep mistakes to a minimum, keep the penalties to a minimum, turnovers, an absence of turnovers would be delightful. And so we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
All right, what's coming up on Gumbo for the Tiger Soul?
Oh, the one of the best things about Gumbo for the Tiger Soul has been my opportunity to meet with a lot of people and share not only stories but recipes. And so, some people refer to it as a cookbook, and it really is a cookbook of sorts, and lots of great recipes. I'm getting ready to use a couple of my recipes this weekend, and for the Thanksgiving holidays, I'll be using it. And I've been communicating with the LSU Alumni Association. I'm getting ready to make a contribution based upon sales of the book. So in December, I'll be meeting with the folks to get them the donation again on behalf of Gumbo for the Tiger Soul. And again, it's more than just a football game. It's right there on the cover. And I'd like for people to think about that. This is going to be a big game. But it's more than just a football game. I'm going to be having a whole lot of my friends at the house on Saturday, and just that time to get together and share in good stories and fun, laughter, and good food. That's what Gumbo for the Tiger Soul is all about. And for the fans, I encourage you, whichever way this game turns out, let's not get overly excited because we've got a very tough Arkansas team coming into Tiger Stadium next Saturday. And let's not get too overwhelmed and depressed if the Tigers do end up on the short side of the score. I think Les Miles this past week in what he did for Sid Ortis, LSU super fan from Alabama, and having him on the field and really recognizing that life is so important and precious, and just helping that young man and his family as he battled cancer to the very end. And it really is more than just a football game. And Les Miles is just again over and over and over again. He impresses me not only what he does on the field but off the field as well.
Yeah, and before you go, I have to because this picture brings tears to my eyes every time I see it, because it just tells you a lot about what kind of guy Les Miles is. To see him taking the time that he did with this young man, and
Right.
it breaks my heart that I know Sid was supposed to be at this ball game this weekend
Right.
when Alabama and LSU played and didn't make it. But you know what? He's got the best seat in the house now.
That's right. That's right. And, to Les Miles, just to embrace him and to say, hold a spot for me in heaven. Again, just bring, like you said, just chokes you up and just humbles you to see what kind of man that leads the LSU football program. It's such an important, um, defining program for so many people on the field, but also off the field. And just a treasure for the state of Louisiana to have Les Miles there. So, Alabama, hide the China. We're coming.
And I'm sorry to the Aggie fans who we didn't get to talk about Kyler Murray or anything like that, but we'll get to that the next time when this game's out of the way. Seth is picking LSU. I am very hesitatingly picking, if that's such a word, the Alabama Crimson Tide, and I'm hoping beyond hope that I'm completely wrong, and everybody can call me an idiot later on. But that's where it stands right now. Seth, thanks very much for coming on.
I hope you're wrong too.
And oh God, listen, nobody wants to be wrong more than I do right now. Thanks very much for being on with us this week, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, that's Seth Guerra, the author of Gumbo for the Tiger Soul. I'm Bryan Houston. More a look at the LSU-Alabama game than a report on the SEC Week 10 this week, but I promise we'll get back to a much more fair and balanced look at everything next week on Rattle and Hum Sports. You can watch this Spreecast and others on Rattle and Hum Sports, the website, www.r&hsports.com. Thanks very much for watching, and we will talk to you next time.